My name is Shlomi Ron. I'm the co-founder and the CEO at the Visual Storytelling Institute, here based in sunny Miami, Florida. Actually, today I'm broadcasting from Tel Aviv in Israel. I'm here for a 2-week visit. And today, the focus of our show is kind of an interesting one. I've been trying to do a show about e-learning for a while now. And it so happens that I met a fantastic guy that he's an expert in e-learning and storytelling. So I couldn't ask for more, actually. So just a little bit about e-learning in general, just so we can set the stage properly. So from the quick search that I've done, it looks like the global e-learning market size is expected to reach 65.4 billion by 2023. And this is according to a survey by Research and Markets. And this phenomenal growth projection is driven largely by two elements. One is, and I'm sure my guest is going to talk about it, technology-enabled learning that helps organization train human resource. And number two, the strong adoption of mobile and social media that really work as on-the-go amplifiers. So those two elements together are really responsible for the tremendous growth in the e-learning space. And that's why I'm super excited to have on our show today one of really the amazing e-learning experts and also a narrative futurist, Yanis Angelis. And before we get started, I want to give you guys some background about Yanis. So Yanis has been working for more than 25 years in organizations in different roles, mainly training, strategy, planning, marketing, and communication. His work is informed by the principles of Gestalt Psychology, Theory U, narrative therapy, and the art of hosting. And he also facilitates teams on storytelling, collaboration, learning strategies, innovation, and future making in a disruptive world. If that's not enough, he's also coaching and curating individuals on their career path and designs and host events on organizational change and personal transformation, such as the INTAGIO and Berlin Change Days, just to name a few. And recently he co-authored a book called Beyond Storytelling. And this book is all about demonstrating how to work with stories in organization, communities, and as an individual. Wow, that's a mouthful. That's fantastic trajectory. And welcome to the show, Yanis.
Thank you, Shlomi. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here and to share, part of my knowledge, part of my experience.
So with that, I'd like to start asking you a very simple question. When you think about the buyer's journey, a funnel, it's a marketing model where basically the first stage is a discover, and you typically, dealing with strangers that are going to hear your story for the first time. So this is exactly the context that you are at this moment with my audience. They are complete strangers for you. So if they asked you, well, tell us what you do and what makes what you do so special, what would you say?
Okay. You already said a lot. I just want to elaborate more on these two things that they are more or less dominating my profession now, which is the one is I work as a story practitioner. Mm-hmm. And what does this mean is it means that I'm working with stories, and storytelling and visual storytelling is a part of it. There are a lot more elements of a story work, which is story listening, which I consider as an essential and basic leadership skill today.
Is it similar to social listening?
Story listening.
Okay. Yeah.
So how do you really listen to stories? There is a kind of approach of how we listen to stories in order even to support the storyteller to tell their stories better, in a better way. So story listening is a part of it. Story harvesting, it's very important. So what are the stories that we choose to collect? And to harvest, and what do we do with these stories after? Story triggering, how can we support people and create a space for them to open up and tell their stories, their authentic stories? So there are a lot of things that they are much more connected to this term, which is called story work. And
Awesome.
so this is my occupation. I'm working as a story practitioner. And of course, this is taking place in organizations. So when they invite me,
right.
this means that they are all connected with leadership, with change, with cross-cultural interventions.
Yeah.
So everything related with the functions of the organization. But
I see.
always, story is always figural.
I understand.
So, yeah, this was the one thing. The second thing you mentioned, it is a narrative futurist, and I'm sure that our audience says, what is that?
Yeah, it sounds very exciting, though.
Yeah, so let me elaborate a bit on that. So actually, what does it mean is that what I'm doing is I'm trying to breathe life into, most of the times, dry and stiff foresight scenarios. You know, these scenarios that they come out of a research, they are something like 500 pages, probably nobody reads them, and they are more or less talking about climate change, or what's going to happen with the food, what's going to happen with the energy. But actually what's happening there is that the people are missing. So there is a lot of data, there are a lot of predictions. So what I'm doing is that I'm supporting people to find and place themselves in these scenarios. So what I'm doing is that I support them to build their future stories. And this means not only where you are going to be, but what will be your role there, and what will be your contribution and influence of things to happen or not to happen if we don't want that. So these are the two main pillars that I'm doing today. And the learning, of course, it was something that I was doing for many years in the past. And in this period, I'm through these processes of story practitioner. I advise companies if they want to bring stories and visual storytelling in their programs. And I'm supporting them now from the stage of a story practitioner.
I see. So it sounds like you, as you said, you are basically operating on two spheres. One is the organizational storytelling, and two is the the forecasting of how the future is going to look like in a story format in different for different topics. And e-learning is just one mechanism or vehicle that you use in order to work with people and kind of get them trained on different objectives, right?
Yeah,
awesome.
And this includes also personal coaching. So it's all in a mix there, depending on what will be the needs of the person, of the customer who invites me.
Right. So you mentioned that as part of these two spheres of activities, you also use visual storytelling. So one of the things that I also do on this show with my guests is typically I kind of try to probe them, because visual storytelling, as you know, is historically is referenced as in the context of filmmaking, graphic design, movie making. It's pretty new in the context of marketing, which is what the Visual Storytelling Institute is focusing on. So I'm kind of wondering, since it's a new definition under new context, what is your definition for visual storytelling in the programs that you're running?
Yeah. I mean, you have really depicted very nicely in your masterclass, Shlomi. It's not something really rocket science to define what is visual storytelling, and you have put it very nicely about saying that it's a marketing strategy. I mean, about engaging customers, putting customers in the center. So then if somebody could go and check this particular terminology that you have placed there, regarding my projects, I would just firstly exchange the word marketing with the word training. So it's a training strategy as well. Okay. And of course, I would like to expand it more in its let's say soft perspective. So for me, visual storytelling in the training realm is an invitation. It's an invitation for enhancing the learner's engagement. And this is proven by research and science. And I would take it even a step further, which is not only we're not only about engagement, but we're talking about the feeling of belonging. And also, this takes you to the next step, which is that the people that they feel that they belong in this tribe of stories that you create in a visual way for your products, they become best advocates after.
Right.
And so, and the more the people get attached with your stories, the more they will talk about these stories after. So this is a thing that I would put in the visual storytelling. It's not just a tool or a method, it's an invitation for something.
That's interesting perspective. I never thought about it this way. And especially in the training realm, where you basically want to get people engaged in the materials and not bore them, right, with a lot of kind of flat questions, survey-like. How can you take it to the next level? I'm going to talk about it, I'm sure. So, but before we do that, I want to kind of rewind your story, so to speak, and basically kind of, if you could take us to the early days, how did you start in e-learning in the first place, in storytelling? Because what's interesting for my audience, which is comprised of marketers and entrepreneurs, is how people start the journey they are on today. The first steps that you took are really meaningful. What was the call to adventure?
Yeah, you're right. So if we're thinking in terms of a hero's journey, it's exactly as you said it. It was a call to adventure. And in a sentence, it's like, as you said, so something compelling really triggered me.
Yeah.
And this was back in 2011, so it's something like 8 years ago. I was leading the marketing department in a big German pharmaceutical company.
And you're based in Berlin, just so I forgot to mention this, right?
No, I'm not in Berlin. I'm in a place which is called Bad Homburg, and it's very close to Frankfurt.
Oh, I see. Got it. Okay.
And Bad Homburg was the place where the headquarters of the company I used to work for was there. So when I was there, it was the time, I don't know if you remember, it was the time that this famous phenomenon of MOOCs. So MOOCs is an abbreviation, just for our audience, MOOCs is an abbreviation stands for Massive Open Online Courses.
Yeah.
It was the time that this
Coursera, right? Coursera is one that's...
Exactly. Exactly. Coursera is a platform. So the MOOCs is the phenomenon of MOOCs is about top-notch universities. They decided to offer for free their top-notch classes, some of them at least.
Right.
And it was a small revolution in the learning environment, in the educational environment, not only the academic one, but also in organizations, because most of the people were coming from organizations.
Right.
So one of these people, it was me. So I was very much intrigued. I was very much enthusiastic when I started testing that. And I remember I was coming back home, something like 8 o'clock, sometimes 9 o'clock in the evening after my work. I played a little bit with my kids. I put them to bed.
Yeah.
And then I was, after 10 o'clock in the evening, sometimes, most of the times after midnight, I was there in my dark room, in front of my screen, discovering that I can learn in a new way. This new e-learning, this new digital way of learning was really for me a kind of, how can I say, revelation is the English word. So it was, I saw the light. Yeah. In my dark room, I saw the light.
You were in the flow, pretty much.
It was amazing, and of course this was, and I take the opportunity now to tap on some visual storytelling elements that they were in these MOOCs that really triggered me and made me, some months after, to bring this concept in my company.
I see.
So it was a kind of transformational process for me, because at that time, like a universe conspiracy, the company asked me to support the new digital strategies, the shift from typical classroom trainings to more digitalized ones. So everything happened at the same time. And I say, hey, this is what I want to do. I'm going to this beautiful experience that I personally have in my dark room. I want to bring it in the company and create beautiful learning programs. Because I was so much engaged in this new way of learning that I thought, yes, this is something that we can do in the organization.
And do you know what platform did you use at the time?
Most of the times it was Coursera.
Okay.
And I did some courses in EDX. EDX is the platform. At that time it was Harvard and what else? Which one?
Udemy, another one.
Yeah, and MIT. So Harvard and MIT was in this platform. So my first course was about on organizational analysis.
Oh, I see. It
was from Stanford. And just to give you one visual storytelling element there. So what was happening, back in 2011, still some things were a bit primitive in terms of technology. So the professor, what he did, he just uploaded his slides. But let me see if I can find and share that. Let me see if we can see it on the screen. Can you see that on the screen?
Yes.
So, it was this course, and he was somehow talking and he was appearing as an animation in this right-hand down corner of the slide, of the screen. And I felt like in my dark room, it was like a miniature that it was jumping out on my desktop, teaching for me.
Oh, that's so funny.
So, I mean, there were slides, but at the same time, this nice way of visualizing this nice story. This was I think the missile crisis in Cuba. So he was telling this story, and at the same time he was there.
Yeah.
The slides were there. He was there. That's a nice thing. So just for our audience to know. So I think this was very effective.
Because you get facial expressions, you get emotions.
Exactly. And this thing that he was like a miniature that I could just take him and put him on my desk. Oh. And because he was a very good lecturer, and actually he was telling beautiful stories, I felt that he was teaching personally for me. So this is one thing. The second thing that he did is that every week there were modules. So every week when the module was ending, he was doing these side screen chats. So he was taking some questions from the students. He was creating a video, a simple video, but it was a short one. And he was answering these questions, which I think, let me see, if I can share that. Wait a minute. So you can see here, it's a simple video, probably with his mobile, in his office, in his back office.
Yes.
And he is just very much, again, so video is, as we know, is a great, I think, visual storytelling means. So he was communicating with this way with his students in a way that he was answering the questions that the students have posed during the week. So
that's interesting. So it's like almost like a personal Q&A session where students would send questions, record a video question, and you would answer them in a recorded session afterwards.
Exactly. And then, when you have something like we have been, I think, 50,000 students. I mean, it's amazing. 50,000 students in a virtual class. And today, I mean, I checked the numbers. Today, we have 100 million students worldwide that they are participating and have been enrolled in MOOCs. This is crazy number, huh?
Yeah.
So we have been 50,000 students, and when you have 50,000 students, there will always be somebody who take notes and share it with the other people, okay, with the other students. So there was a guy there, and let me show this also. Another nice visual storytelling.
So it's like a community, basically a community of students helping each other.
Yes, but I mean, he created this nice, it's not an infographic, it's a kind of learning tree, it's a kind of map, So he was visualizing his notes in a way that it has been quite easy to go through in a structured way, so it's a tree. And this was communicated with all the students through the chat room.
Oh,
So that's a nice thing also that maybe people can use, you know. And I think there are some tools that they do that in an automated way in the web. I don't know when you want to propose, but I think that there is something anyhow. So this, as you can imagine, all these kind of beautiful things that they were happening with my personal learning triggered me to do the same thing in the company. And it was incredibly successful because, of course, then I did a lot of more things. So I used a lot of other elements, but we can talk about it after. So this is the backstory, actually, of me dealing with getting enthusiastic with the e-learning world. And of course, after that, when I started working with e-learning, I realized that the most, let's say, effective element for people to be engaged and get in a flow is to tell stories.
I see.
You tell stories about a product. You tell stories about whatever it had to be the topic. I was in the marketing department, so my learnings were not like HR e-learnings about skill development. They were all about product knowledge. So product knowledge, and this means that we were building for any new product, we were building an e-learning, and it was part of the launch package for the salespeople.
Got it. So I think this is a great, your story is a great evidence actually to the fact that sometimes you need to experiment with as many things as possible because you can never know what could trigger, you know, your next adventure that's going to be, you know, your main focus either as an independent storyteller or as part of a working for an organization, so like you did with that German company. So that's a great lesson to have. So I'm kind of curious now, as you were kind of plunging into, you were asked to create an e-learning program for that German company. What were the typical business objectives they asked you to achieve basically using this program?
Yeah. Thanks for asking that, because it's a kind, not complicated, but it relates to what was the respective stakeholder. So, for example, the boss of my boss, who was the president and the board member, his main objective was how can we raise the sales? Is your e-learning programs supporting us to raise the sales of this particular product that the e-learning is referring to? And yes, it was, of course, the case. And since this was a kind of entrance, we did it gradually. We did a lot of pilot programs. So we had the opportunity to compare, you know, how things were going when we were in learning and how things were going when we had still the old classroom training. So there was a difference, and it was reflected also on the sales.
And just to provide more context, what was the nature of the product you were doing the e-learning around?
Medical devices.
Medical devices, got it.
Medical devices. Okay. So then the other stakeholder, which had his own objective, more or less similar to, of course, to the president, which was, of course, it was my boss who said, yes, we need to raise the sales, but please, I'm holding the budget, so do it with the less cost possible. So this is where the learning thing came in, because it has a geographical expansion. And for a global company, this played a big role. Instead of inviting, let's say, something like 400 people from 89 countries to come into the headquarters and train them for a week or whatever, you just do any learning program, and no matter how it costs, it's definitely less costly rather than if these people had to travel.
Yeah.
So then, of course, it was the scientific department, no? Because they said, hey, okay, this is great. For us, it is important that all the science and the working principles of the devices are really, really depicted in the best scientific way in your learnings. So that was a different objective. So we need to be very much compliant with the scientific information and data that the subject matter experts were providing to us.
So the scientific business objective was more around information transfer, basically, you'd say?
Yeah, but for them, because e-learning was a new thing, they wanted to make sure that this will be, let's say, transferred in a way that it is compliant with the scientific guidelines that we had in the company.
Got it. I see. I see.
And then the other stakeholder was myself, that I was, of course, more than, I was interested with all the other objectives. And I had an additional one, which for me was the learner's engagement.
Mm-hmm.
Because from that I could get feedback and I could get better in doing my next programs.
Got it.
My next program. So I needed to really bend over and focus on the learner's engagement. So you see, there were different kind of objectives depending on who was responsible for what.
It's kind of interesting. And you were sitting in the marketing department at the time, and then you were asked to achieve sales objectives, scientific objectives. It sounds like, were you also engaged in work that it's more marketing oriented on the business objective side?
Yeah, I was, but this is another story now, because as I said, at that time, I was doing my I had my marketing projects, and at the same time, I got this responsibility and mandate to go to the training, let's say, sphere and realm, and really support the digitalization of the old ways of training that we did in the company for this particular business unit. So I was in this business unit of blood transfusion.
I see.
And we had medical devices for blood transfusion, blood separation, and the disposables also. So that was the department I was leading from the marketing perspective.
Got it. So now that we know a little bit about your journey, the business objective you were asked to achieve while you were sitting in the marketing department doing your marketing project, in addition, you started a whole training program. Then can you walk us a little bit through your journey of what was the user experience like of creating a visual storytelling, using a visual storytelling techniques in creating those e-learning programs? You know, for example, have you used images, videos, infographics, animations? What type of elements have you used? What techniques of visual storytelling have you used in your programs? And give us more sense of the end-to-end process.
Yeah. As I told you, I mean, I had this experience from the MOOCs, so I took a lot of ideas from there. And of course, you know, technology and as you mentioned, I mean, the learning industry is growing like crazy. So technology was running really fast. So new kind of approaches, they were just popping up and they were emerging. And so I was, the work I was doing was evolving through the time every year. So I used a lot of different kind of visual storytelling elements and visual means. And let me recall, I would like to give you an example from one product that we had. Let me just show you one slide for that. So I'm going to share my screen again. And I want you to let me know if you can see this operation room on the screen. Is it true?
Wow, look at that. Yeah, we can definitely see that.
So, I mean, just note down that this is happening back in 2013, okay? So what I did, for example, just to support our audience to understand and maybe also use something. So, so this was about how to use the product in the operation room. Normally in the past, we had this, which is called a manual, okay? And it was a PDF file, so people were creating some slides, PowerPoint slides for that. And there was a person, normally the subject matter expert, who was inviting people for a training and explaining that. And then maybe people, they were going there and had a hands-on training in some of our labs, okay?
Yep.
Okay, but then the way I did this e-learning this learning program was very different. So I created stories. Instead of having a manual, I created a story, so as it is happening in a real life. And here is a kind of experienced senior anesthesiologist, and he is training a junior anesthesiologist in the operation room.
Yeah.
So I created the environment, so I had an image. I use images that I would find in a gallery, which is an image. It's not a real. It's an image created. Most of the times, a good tip for our audience, if they want to find some environments and images and avatars and so on, they need to search in game websites, because this is where people, they buy avatars, they buy different kind weapons, clothes, uniforms, whatever. So we had this image here, and then we bought some avatars. So these are avatars, okay? This is a low budget solution, huh? Because we didn't create an animation as people used to see in the movies, or even in the animations that we are used when we are entering an aircraft, and they tell us about how to put our seatbelt and so on. So this was a low budget solution. So we bought.
You sourced the visuals from different databases that are available to people, and then you kind of mix and match, you know, the avatars from one source, the backdrop from another.
Exactly. So there were different ones. I mean, I don't know if you know, when you buy avatars, normally you buy them naked, huh?
Yeah, okay.
And this is funny because it's software. So sometimes you buy clothes. We had some crazy stories. You buy clothes that they don't fit, and it's like in reality. So so then we buy the avatars. And what I do here is that you see there is a screen here, which normally in a normal operation room doesn't exist. But this is a kind of virtual screen. So there is a video which is played there in order to explain some things to the junior anesthesiologist. There is always a dialogue, and for this I have always a voiceover audio, and I always, depending how many characters I have, I buy voices from respectively different kind of actors. So for example, here I had 9 characters, and I had 5. I didn't have just only one male voice and 1 female voice. I had 3 female voices and 2 male voices, so that I create a kind of more realistic dialogue. So even if it seems like a static thing, which is a sequence of slides,
right?
The audio, okay, and the different perspectives that in every slide uses, it creates a kind of feeling that there is a kind of flow of a story.
Yeah.
Another tip is that I always use subtitles, always. So this audio is in English, the subtitles are in English, so it enhances. We made some surveys, and research shows that it enhances the learning capabilities, and it supports the engagement of the learners to get into a flow state.
So you pretty much started transcribing images way before, since today, like we see it so obvious, with the video, because a lot of the social media feeds, video is playing silent. So, having the subtitles is a must today. So it seems like you've done it early on.
Yeah, and when I was doing that, I didn't know. I mean, I learned it also recently. Where was it? Somebody in LinkedIn said there was a survey. So at least in LinkedIn, 80% of the video viewers, so the people that they watch videos, they watch it soundless.
Yeah,
that's interesting. So, and even more, I think. So you need to put subtitles on your videos, and maybe this is the case with e-learnings because of the mobility. So a lot of the employees, they may take their learnings as they are traveling in a train. Huh? So then you definitely need to have something like subtitles when you have a story and audio behind to say. So.
And how big was your staff? It was just you?
What do you mean it was just me?
Did you have like a team of other professionals that help you produce this?
No, I had a team. I had several teams. I had the project management team. In this project management team, I also had a gamer. I was not able to have, from a budget perspective, a game designer, but I was a gamer. So a gamer helped me a lot to deal with the gamification items that I was including there. So there was the external agencies that they were doing the programming. So the authoring tools, they were working with the authoring tools, Captivate, Articulate, whatever. And there was also the internal IT department that they were having the LMS, the Learning Management System. And when we were giving them ready to use the program, they were uploading it in the platform, and it was available for all the employees in the company. So there were several teams working for that, for sure. Huh?
Right. And the platform was really a native platform that you guys customized, or it was off the shelf?
I mean, as I said, the LMS was an LMS from the company. In the beginning, we bought some LMS from a well-known company. Then we started developing with another company our own LMS. Today, I'm not sure what it is existing, but let's say there was a kind of platform that it could guarantee the safety and that the content that we were uploading there would not slip away to any competitors' hands, something like this. So, and as I say, regarding authoring tools, I was working with externals at the time, but now more and more companies, they just get this kind of services inside.
I see. And
at least in Europe, I don't know how is it in US, but in Europe, still we try to have things more or less inside the company.
Got it. And just out of curiosity, I'm kind of curious. I understand that you created these visuals by sourcing them from different databases of avatars and so on. But what type of interactivity have you done for those programs? I'm kind of curious what kind of interaction you created.
Thank you for asking this. This is very important, again, in order to support the engagement of the learners.
Yep.
So I include a high level of interactivity. Just to give you an example, I mean, maybe you saw the device. It's a big device. It's a quite complicated device to function. And what I did, for example, I had, depending on how long was the content, I had one or maybe two or sometimes three modules, which was fully interactive. Actually, I was in the screen of the computer. I was representing I was having everything that happens in the screen of the device, and people with their mouse were interacting on their screens. Okay. And every screen was leading to the next screen, as it happens in reality when you really functioning the device.
Oh, wow.
So, that was really a tough work to be done. It needed a lot of knowledge also, and it needed the support of the software programmers as well, which we had, of course, from our labs. But in terms of effectiveness, it was amazing. It was amazing because people didn't need to have the device in front of them in order to go through basic functions, and they did it on screen with the high level of interactivity that we used. So for me, interactivity is not just clicking to go to the next slide. No, that's not, sorry.
Yes, really about simulation.
Even the quiz parts we had, so every module at the end, we had the test. This was fully interactive, so people had to match things and to combine things from the device, or they have to compile a disposable, which was in pieces. So, there was a lot of interactivity. And even at that time, there were some tools. But today, I can imagine that there are even much more tools. But where technology gets us, we probably talk a little bit later.
Yeah. But so it sounds like you did simulations of actual medical devices. And in terms of kind of engaging the audience, the learners, have you used like any, obviously I assume you had some sort of test or Q&A to kind of measure the information, knowledge transfer, but at the time, did you do anything that was more kind of a live experience where the instructor was maybe video chatting with the students at a given time to create a sense of a classroom, like a virtual classroom, or was it all kind of programmed and self-served to the end user?
At this particular time, for this particular kind of products, as I said, it was a new thing. So the first thing we did, it was to do it purely as an e-learning program. So we didn't do webinars, if this is your question. So
yes.
Because the idea was how can we really reduce the costs of getting people together, even if this was the case for getting them in a classroom in their headquarters in Hong Kong or in Paris or wherever, because still at that time people had to gather in a place.
Got it.
But I know today that, of course, webinars are much more part of the practice of whatever digital strategies we have in the company, exists in the company, or also not only from what I see outside there are so many tools that they're really moving towards this direction. And there are more to come on that, with virtual reality, augmented reality. So there are a lot of different kinds of interactions that they are coming in the future in the e-learning realm.
Yeah. And just before we jump into the future, I'm kind of curious, can you give us an example of like of the outcome of an e-learning program that you completed successfully? What is a success criteria? How you measure success?
I mean, as I said, this was part of a launch program. Okay, so the first thing was the first criteria was how the time issue. So how quickly people got between 90 and 100% of their training. And of course, compared to the classroom trainings that you had people to travel and in this busy life they have, of course, there was a big difference on that. So this was the first time. So fast access training, okay? The second thing, as I said, it was how is this reflected to, again, regarding time quick sales coming, and of course, much more, let's say, more sales compared to products that we still have them under classroom training. And as I say, we had this opportunity to do pilot phases. So there were in some continents for the same product, we were introducing training via e-learnings. For the same product, another continent, it was still the old classroom training. And there was a big difference, sometimes double-digit difference in terms of growth in the first 9 months, and secondly, in the first 18 months. So there was a kind of deviation that we could definitely see, and we could say that, yeah, this is coming because of the different ways of introducing new kind of trainings. So this was the metrics. And as I say, for me, it was so much important to see people getting motivated, because when people get motivated in training, and I have written a book about that, I have developed my own model, I have an e-learning model. And when I elaborate this, it was published 2 years ago in the book that you mentioned. It was in this Beyond Storytelling book, is that if people get engaged and happy with the way they learn, as a parallel process, this is reflected the way they communicate with customers and the way they sell the product. They feel more confident, they feel more happy. So it's I mean, psychologists have proven that. So it's this parallel process is not a kind of it's a phenomenon that has been very much examined in the Gestalt Psychology. So I was interested to see how this was going on, and I really saw that there was a kind of great community engagement now. It was not individual anymore. So people were really sharing their experiences of these beautiful learning courses they were getting. I got feedback from people that they say, hey, Yanis, this was, for me, in my whole career life, the best training experience I had, which was very touching, yeah. So
it sounds like to kind of close on this note of the success criteria. It sounds like you have two categories. One is the how good was the training program itself, in terms of time completion, satisfaction, knowledge, all that. These are all objective criteria. But then again, you had the business objectives. So in the case of the sales, you compare before and after, you could see how the program did in achieving those sales goals. So this is an external goal for the training program. So it's important to kind of make a distinction of those two.
Correct.
And looking now to the future, you kind of dropped a few words about that. I'm kind of curious where you see visual storytelling and e-learning heading in the future. What do you see there?
I mean, as I told you, I work also as a narrative futurist. So I see the future from two perspectives. One is the technological perspective. And there, I think, there are so many things coming. virtual reality and augmented reality are now, of course, they are part of the learning of the digital learning programs in corporates and artificial intelligence and so on. And where is this getting us in terms of visual storytelling is that, so for example, virtual reality, okay, when you go into a virtual reality learning process, actually with the technology, the way it has been evolved today, you can become, and you are, not only the protagonist, but you are the script writer and the director. So so you have this virtual reality environment, and you can by yourself really see yourself in the future there that you create and everything. So I find this really fascinating, to be honest, and it
It's kind of,
changes
it's
totally
kind of
the.
interesting. Also, recently everybody talked about Black Mirror, that interactive TV series on Netflix, where you can actually control the plot line. So obviously this is meant for entertainment purposes, but you can easily overlay it with training objectives and really create e-learning experience that it's kind of you control the nature of the story, as you said before. So do you think this is where the future is headed, that you turn your audience into not only consumers but also proactive story makers?
I think yes, at least one part it goes this direction. And I don't remember who said it, but as you described, so the future is here. It's
Yes.
not just yet evenly distributed. So this is what
Right.
is missing.
Yeah.
So uh, I think we will see a lot of things in terms of storytelling and of visual storytelling coming in the future, and new tools and so on. But this is, as I said, this is the technological view. Huh?
Right.
There is the other one, the human, which I'm also very much interested in. And from this perspective, what I see today, and I think this will continue in the near future, the way the things have been, the way the things have changed is that more and more people now, with the use of video, so video is a key element for visual storytelling,
Yeah.
they share their personal stories.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that in LinkedIn, we see it in Instagram, we see it everywhere. And I think this will evolve more. So we'll have much more people in social media, and I see that this comes also in the training environment. So in an organization, people will share their stories through videos in the main platform of the company, and I think that this is a thing that more or less again it's here. It just needs some more years to become more organized inside companies.
Got it.
So people have the need to share their stories,
Mm-hmm.
and technology supports them. And I think the challenge we have is how can we really keep these two things together, the human perspective and the technological perspective. I
Yeah.
think visual storytelling is a vehicle for that. Using
Absolutely.
technology to tell your own personal stories in order to engage people, in order to, for whatever reason, so to sell a product, to
Yeah.
engage people in the culture of your company. I think it's a very essential thing for the future, Shlomi.
No, absolutely. I cannot agree with you more. So to kind of we reach the almost end of the show. So I want to finish up by asking you if you can give our audience very simple 3 tips just to get them started. Let's say we have marketers that work in an organization, a part of a marketing team, or they might have their own startup that they lead, and they have maybe customers or partners that they want to train or use e-learning solution for. Uh, what would you say would be the basic 3 tips for them to get started, both from the technical stuff, the tools that they could use easily, and also the philosophy of training that you would recommend them?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the first tip is leverage technology. So keep an eye what's existing there, what's coming, because there are beautiful tools coming up. Some of them, they are for free or they are of really low cost. So
Mhm.
just keep an eye on what's going on there and make sure that you are able to make choices. I mean, wise choices of what you would like to use, because it's everything there, but you need a little bit to. So keep an eye and actually leverage technology for your own benefit. So this is the first thing. The second thing, from my experience, if you want really to engage people in this crazy life we live, and you engage them people in the learning process, keep it short and crisp.
Yeah.
So my first corporate experience was a compliance training that it started with a 6 minutes video of the head of the compliance, the director, and it was incredibly boring, and I lost the whole everything. So what I did, it was I applied micro learning in my projects, which is now it's called micro learning, but in the past it was this, you chunk your content. Actually, my videos, my longest video was 45 seconds. So even if I had a kind of video of 3, 4, 5 minutes, I was chunking it. So in between, I was putting the video, then I was putting a kind of explanation, then an animation, then a small story, and then again, the second part of the video. So make it short and crisp,
And do you have
especially
an ideal time period for what would make an ideal short?
I mean, as I said, I try to make it really short. For me, maybe 2 minutes, it will be the maximum.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. As I say, 45 seconds, if you can chunk something in 45 seconds, it's amazing. It's like a pitch of a characteristic of a product, whatever. So make it really short. Make a video, subtitles in the video, and then if you want to add something more, do it in a later phase. So keep it short and crisp. It's important.
And when you say short, another follow-up question. Sorry,
Please.
do you throw into that also some sort of interactivity, something for the audience to do, or it's all kind of one-way communication coming from the instructor?
No, interactivity is the other tip, which I wanted to say. So definitely include as much as possible interactivity in your projects. So as I say, it's a matter of getting people in a flow. It's a matter of engagement. It's a matter of supporting their self-discipline. It's a very difficult thing, to stay on your screen for 2 hours, because of learning programs, and you just see slides, passing by. So you need definitely to have a high level of interactivity. So this is another tip I would like to give. So please allow me to have something like 2, 3 more tips. Not 3, it was not so much.
Sure.
So yes, make it interactive. Make it interactive.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, because I'm with you, and I'm thinking, there's probably also some hierarchy of an interactivity, from basically flat listening to material, to writing comments, to filling up a short survey, to real-time dialogue like we're doing right now, for example. These are all, there's hierarchy, and the more rich your interactivity, the higher the engagement is going to go up, right?
Correct. And the other one, we are talking about visual storytelling in the era of digital. So we are talking about actually digital storytelling. And my tip is keep it human.
Right.
So, use the digital thing, but keep it human. It means that try to include personal stories.
Absolutely.
That's what we did, for example. Instead of taking the manual, or instead of taking the results of a study or of a meta-analysis, which is fine, you will put that in your e-learning, about the efficiency of a drug or of a device, go out and interview some users. Take the personal stories of the people and bring them back. And then, do your nice stuff with that in the area of digital tools that you have. But keep it human, personal stories and touching stories. This counts today a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the last one, we are marketeers, but I have to say something. Maybe it's more a European approach. I don't know, or my approach. Don't make up stories.
Oh yeah.
Don't make up stories. There are so many beautiful stories out there. So just learn how you go out and start witnessing stories, start collecting stories, harvesting stories out there. As I said before, it's part of my work. Be ready, as one of my mentors says, Christina Baldwin, always be ready to knock the story door of a person and just be there present and capture their stories. There is always something interesting there to get. And then, of course, you can transfer it into your everyday work and everyday projects.
No, for
So
sure.
make up a story, just find the right stories and use them in the proper way with respect to the people that they shared it with you.
Yeah. One thing I forgot to ask you about, what do you say about integrating some incentives like points, the gamification of training programs to create some sense of loyalty? Is it something you do in every training program?
I use the gamification. There is it's a buzzword today.
Yeah.
In the time that I started back in 2011, it was in the hype phase.
Right.
Actually, I did a gamification course in the where was it? In Penn University, I think. I cannot recall, with Professor Verband. So I had my gamification course from a high, top-notch university, and it was amazing. So I'm convinced that gamification can help in terms of enhancing the engagement of the people. But it needs to be in a balanced way. And as you probably have seen, I used also something like badges and points and so on, and leaderboards, but that was not my cup of coffee. What I took from gamification, it was the avatars, for example. So using avatars, all this. So the metaphors. So when I had to compare two devices, for example, our device was fast, the other was slower. I make a kind of animation using a metaphor. So the fast was the rabbit, the slow was the turtle, or the fast was the cat.
Yeah.
So this is a nice thing to work with items, but this is gamification all about. So I don't use games. I use elements of games, and this is what gamification is all about. Elements, techniques, and game design. That's important. If you can metaphors and do something like, we did a survey in our, just the last example, we made a survey in our about our audiences, about our learners at the time, and we realized that most of them were in an average of 35 to 40. That was the average age. And we say, okay, what was at the age of 17 when we were playing games, or what was the most famous game at the time? And it was Super Mario. So we created a nice game with Super Mario, because I use also in my projects the familiarity concept. So you need to include things that they are familiar to your audience in order to make them again feel more engaged. So
fantastic.
A lot of things that you can use from gamification, but my message is, please keep a balance, don't overdo it, okay? Yep. Don't use gamification for the sake of gamification. Just use it for the learner's engagement.
Absolutely. No, that's wonderful. Definitely, I could see myself talking to you for hours about this. But as you said, one of your first tips, make it short. So we'll have to make it short for the sake of our audience here. So I want to thank you so much for your time today. And before we leave, how can people reach out and contact you if they have any questions?
Yeah, let me just I upload the slide with my contact details. Actually, they can find me in LinkedIn.
Okay.
They can find me in Twitter. So here, can you see it? Is it?
Yeah, it's coming. Yeah, we see it.
I can share my mail as well, but LinkedIn, especially LinkedIn, I'm always there. So I have a rich profile there. People can find me there, and they can see also a lot of things that I'm doing and I'm involved. Also some social projects that I'm involved. We have this beyond storytelling thing. I forgot to tell you. It's a kind of initiative. We have already performed 2 successful conferences. We published 2 books. Now we're publishing the 3rd book. Yeah. It's going to be released in next June. And the title is Transforming Organizations using story-based approaches. So
Excellent.
there we are.
Wonderful. So I want to thank you again for the time today and the boatload of information you shared about e-learning and how visual storytelling fits into this world. And just before we go, I want to remind our audience, we actually try to innovate as much as we can on our end. And on March 7th, we actually launching a new program called Coffee Break with Stories. And it's going to be an online networking roundtable where we're going to have 10 attendees sharing their stories, their personal stories. And we're going to talk a little bit about visual storytelling questions they have. So I encourage everybody that's listening or watching this broadcast to check us out and sign up. It's a free event online on March 7th, as I said, and all the details will be on our website, visualstorytell.com. So with that, I thank you for checking us out, and I'll see you in our next episode. Thank you. Thank you, Yanis.
Thank you very much.
Visual Storytelling Today is recorded in Miami, Florida. The show is published exclusively by Visual Storytelling Institute. Learn more at visualstorytell.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on the iTunes Store. Until next time, don't let your big story wait to be told.